A Flash in the Dark, Chapter 24, Unwanted Reunions. Iris smiled as she hit submit on her latest blog post. She took a sip of her coffee and set down her mug. Then there was a gust of wind and she was suddenly on the roof of Jitters looking out over the city. "You're welcome." A voice echoed from behind her, making her jump. Iris spun round to see the woman in red leaning against the wall, her face in shadow. "But I just hit send. How did you?" Iris spluttered, making the woman in red laugh. "Speed reading." Her voice was odd, just like it had been before. It sounded like her voice was not shaking, but vibrating, causing a distorting effect. "It's crazy what you can do with your voice," Iris said, taking a step forward. The woman in red sped over to the other side of the roof. "You need to stop writing your blog," the woman stated. Iris stared down at her. Iris glanced down as her phone began to buzz. She checked the ID. It was Eddie. She would call him back later. She hit ignore and turned back to the hero in front of her. "What else can you do?" she asked as the speedster once again raced to a new spot on the roof. "This is not an interview," the hero deadpanned. Iris laughed and shook her head. "Come on, you have to give me something. Hobbies, pet peeves, favorite color." "Wait, scratch that last one. Red, duh, clearly," Iris said, gesturing to the suit. The woman in red shook her head. "You're not hearing me." "My hearing is fine, just selective. What should I call you?" Iris asked. The woman in red zoomed over to the other side of the roof again and paused before she spoke. "Anything but the streak." There was a slight laugh in her distorted voice. Iris laughed. "Any ideas?" The distant sound of sirens caught their attention. "To be continued, then," the hero said. With no more warning than that, Iris found herself back inside Jitters, her hair windblown, a flash of lightning just visible down the street. Barry sighed, running a hand through her hair. She had been up most of the night in pain as her bones knit back together from where she'd punched out a steel-plated sociopath. They had figured out early on that she burned through normal anesthesia in seconds. Painkillers didn't even take the edge off anymore. She was still a little sore as she walked into work the next morning. Joe pulled her aside. "What happened to you last night?" Joe laid a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Barry sighed. "Got beat up by a steel-plated sociopath." Barry nodded at Joe, who waited until one of the other officers passed to reply. "So he is a meta?" he asked. Barry nodded. Joe shook his head. "That particle accelerator is a gift that keeps on giving. Listen, Eddie's taking point while I run down a lead on a different case. I need you to work with him." Barry raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" Barry's face scrunched up in confusion, and Joe shook his head, holstering his gun and grabbing his jacket. "Because he saw something last night that he can't explain, and he's got questions," Joe said, making a face. Barry nodded as he began to walk away from her. "So basically make up some science stuff to throw him off the scent?" she asked. Joe nodded as he left the precinct, and Barry sighed as she walked into the briefing room. The meeting didn't take long. Barry left for Star Labs soon after, and after a painful meeting with Cisco's latest toy, she headed off to meet Eddie at the scene, where they had found the car her high school bully had stolen the night before. Across town, Iris West was filling an order. Her boss, Lily, grinned at her over the counter as she stirred a latte. "So, Iris, where's your shadow?" Lily asked. Iris raised an eyebrow. "What shadow?" Iris asked the blonde. Lily rolled her eyes at her employee. "You know, Barry. You two have been practically connected at the hip since she woke up." Lily smiled and handed the latte to her waiting customer before turning her attention back to Iris. "She's getting her fix somewhere else." Iris sighed, continuing to box up scones. Her phone buzzed and she pulled it out of her pocket, not noticing her wallet fall out as she did. It was Eddie texting her. Lily cleared her throat and pointed behind Iris. Iris turned and saw a man she recognized as Barry's high school nemesis, Tony Woodward. He was holding her wallet, which was open to the picture of her and Barry and her father that had been taken just a few weeks before Barry's accident. He grinned at her and handed her back the wallet. Talk about being careful who you bully in high school. Allen grew up pretty. But then again, so did you, Iris. Tony said, grinning at her. Iris was wary of him. He'd always been a creep. Tony, long time no see. I'd be happy if I hadn't ever seen you again, Iris thought to herself. She'd never liked him. He'd made Barry's school days miserable. He grinned. Yeah, I got a place out in Keystone now. Out on the west side, about twice the size of this place. You should come along and see it sometime. Bring Allen, he bragged. Iris resisted the urge to roll her eyes. I don't know if my boyfriend would approve. He's a cop, just like my dad. Iris took a step away from him and he advanced slightly. Yeah, I never liked cops. There's something else running around out there these days, though, isn't there? The streak. You write about her. Any idea who Leather Girl is? He asked, stepping still closer. Iris shook her head, taking another step back. No clue, she stated. Tony sneered. Well, I know for a fact that she got beat up last night and ran away like a little girl. Maybe you should write about that. Tony said, grinning. Lily caught Iris's attention and gestured frantically at the TV, which was displaying a police sketch of the man who stood in front of them. Oh, is that so? Maybe I will, Iris said, slowly pulling out her phone. Tony grinned, then looked up at the TV. His eyes narrowed. Give me the phone, Iris, he shouted. She jumped slightly and handed it over as he shouted at her. Then his arm changed. From the elbow down, it seemed to turn to metal. He crushed her phone in his fist and dropped it into the tip jar. He pulled out his wallet and dropped a roll of 20s into the jar on top of the broken phone. For the damages. We'll pick this up some other time. With that, he turned on his heel and left.